Okay, thanks for jumping in. Let's get started. All right, let's talk about this. You've seen me do this a few times. I've kind of cheated here and I've used a thing called Emmet and I've, completed the scaffold or the boilerplate. Okay, so let's break down what each one of these things are and we'll explain to you why they're here and how they're useful. Okay, let's start with the first thing up here. So this thing is called the doc type, and this is the first line of your HTML code. And so what the doc type does is it tells the browser what version of HTML the page is written in. So now notice that this is in lowercase. It could also be like this, and this is still valid. So there's that thing we talk about against consistency, right? So if you're going to use the uppercase version of the doc type declaration or the lowercase one, just keep it consistent across pages. So it is important to note that HTML5 is not case sensitive. So it means that any document type declaration tag and all other tags literally found inside the document can have a combination of uppercase and lowercase. So these are all still valid forms like I showed you in the example just a minute ago. So the choice of capitalization is up to you, but it is in your best interest to keep it consistent. Now, this compared to previous versions of HTML, this is fairly simplistic. The doc type used to be pretty long and pretty verbose just to get that kind of declaration to work. I won't go into that right now. You guys can look that up, but that's the doc type. Next up, we're going to talk about this HTML tag. Now, this has an interesting thing attached to it, this attribute, and we'll get into that later. This HTML opening and this HTML closing tag contains the rest of the document contents within. According to the specification, this is not even needed, which is interesting. So if we were to get rid of this, and I was just to type in something like classic hello world, and then I'm going to jump to a browser, and I just throw in some content, and I'll say, we got rid of the HTML closing and opening tags, and this still works. Now, if we inspect this, the browser kind of put these tags in there for us. Even though we forgot them, the browser placed it in there. And it's complaining here because it's looking for a language tag. The browser kind of does some heavy lifting for us, and this is good and bad in some cases. I'd recommend keeping this one in. And it makes sense because it's logical to provide a single root element where you can place your content within. This attribute is just the lang tag, and we'll get into attributes like I said once again. And this is just specifying the language that the document is set up for. So it could be French, it could be Spanish, it could be whatever. And the document will be set up for those things accordingly. So the next section or the next tag is the head tag, okay? So that's these two tags here. And notice between this tag, we have other elements. And elements and tags are kind of just, the word is interchangeable. Okay, so when we say elements, we're also referring to tags. So this is where we keep all the metadata about the actual document or the page. You'll find that this section will contain sometimes a lot of tags that do specific things that are server related and also good for things like SEO and accessibility and different things. This is an important tag or element because it can also link to things like your style sheets and any external files. So once again, just information about the page goes here. The next set of tags that we'll see here is this one. This element is called a meta tag. So this attribute has a character set and it's set to UTF-8. And if this is set, it must be case insensitive and it's relating to the ASCII values that are available for encoding. You could do this as well. That's also still valid. Another thing to note that meta tags are self-closing elements that do not require a closing tag. You notice that we don't have this at the end of the meta tag, right? Or we don't do this. I mean, we could, but we actually don't. It's self-closing, so you don't need that actually. We'll cover a variety of meta tags in greater detail, but just note that one is specifically around the character set. The next meta tag that we're going to take a look at has a lot of attributes, or actually has two attributes with a lot of variation. So this one is called the viewport tag or viewport meta tag, and it's given by the name here, the attribute name viewport, and it contains contents that we're trying to look for. So what this essentially does, it renders the width of the page to the width of the device's screen size. And we try to define what the screen size is within this contents attribute. Next, we set the user scale, the initial scale, the maximum scale, and then the minimum scale. These are good for building responsive sites or responsive pages and that adhere to a specific width and size within the device that you're trying to control. The initial scale really controls the zoom level. So the value of 1 for the initial scale prevents the default zoom by the browsers. So we'll get into that. And I know it sounds a little complicated, but just think of this as it renders the width of the page and the width of the device's screen size. That's what the viewport meta tag does. The next one we have is HTTP equiv. So this one kind of specifies the document mode for Internet Explorer. And in this case, Edge is the highest supported mode for the compatibility for Internet Explorer. There was a whole history around this, and Internet Explorer didn't really cooperate well and caused a lot of grief when, a lot of developers were doing things with the browser and HTML. This kind of helped rectify some of that. And the last one that's kind of like a default part of the boilerplate is the title. So it's the name that you give the page. And this is what usually shows up over here in the actual page tab. So just a quick overview once again. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. Okay, so we have the document type, so it tells the browser which type of HTML we're using. Then we have the root element, which is the HTML element, and we can specify a different language or the language we'd like to use depending on where we're from or what we're doing. Next down here, we have the character set. So UTF-8 is one of the standards or more popular ones. It could be uppercase or lowercase, right? But once again, we should keep consistency. And you have different variations depending if you read from right to left or left to right. And we have the head tag, and within the head tag, this contains the data about the page, and these are referenced by the metadata tags. The viewport metadata tag, once again, it defines the size, the scale, the initial scale, maximum scale, and down here we have, just think of this as setting the compatibility mode for Internet Explorer. And the last one up here is the body tag, and this is where we place everything we want to be visible in the browser. So for all other tags that we haven't mentioned so far or we haven't addressed, they will go within inside of the body tag.
What do you mean I left the video on? Oh, snap. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna get back to work and you guys get back to the video. Okay, they're still there. All right, I'm going.
There is one more tool that you can use to check the validation of a page. So let's take a look at that. So if you're ever in concern about whether your markup is valid, the WC3 provides a service that allows you to kind of check the validation of a page. So there are 3 ways you can validate this. You can validate by URI, by uploading a file, and you can do by direct input. So we're going to try direct input. So we're just going to go to our project and we're just going to snag this code here. We're just going to copy it, Control C, Control V, and we're going to place it in here, and it's going to do a check. Now, as you can see by this check, we didn't actually pass. There was a warning, and the warning says, consider avoiding viewport values that prevent users from resizing documents. Well, let's say we just wanted this to pass, and I'll show you why we use this later. But for now, we'll do this. We'll do a recheck, and the document will validate, and you don't have any errors. So there are warnings and things that you will get on validation, but you may need those specific things for a reason. And once again, they're warnings. If you wanted the actual full validation, you'd have to really adhere to the standards and correct your document so that you can fully pass validation. Okay, well, that's it for this one, guys. I hope that answered your questions on the basic HTML boilerplate, why these things are set out as default, and how it's structured to start your document. And we'll move into some more things. I'll see you guys in the next one. And that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like the video if you found this useful. Leave your comments and thoughts below. Take care, and I will see you next time.